Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by airs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at airs.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California, and you're on Global TV Talk Show, a business unit of globalbusinessnews.net. Globalbusinessnews.net has been in existence since a friend of mine at Intel helped me develop the site, and that's since '03. And Google Analytics has measured, if we can believe all that, has measured audience page views, and they say over 1 million, 1.2 million. But more recently and more relevant is since we started the Zoom calls as a result of the pandemic crashing my live conference business, which has been around since 25 years. So we started to do this. And since then, we've done 185 broadcasts. This is number 186, some better than others, and from people from around the world. And here we are today with Heazel Trimmer in North Carolina. Did I say that right?
Trimer,
yeah. Okay, good. And so Heazel is spelled E-A, which is unusual also.
well, par for the course. Par for the course.
Okay, so we're going to find out more about you, and you can ask me about me. It's okay, and we'll have a conversation. So we call this kind of a show. Ready?
Yes.
Interface.
Excellent.
So if
Excellent.
you Google the word interface, it says, it's computer talk, geek talk, and I'm not a geek. So it's when organizations or people meet in a place and then they work together from that point forward. Interface. Now, of course, it's an interview show, but we try to make it a little fancier. So, Heazel Trimmer, you have quit the corporate side and now you're doing your own thing. Is that correct?
So I've had a bit of a journey, but I've done consulting on and off, especially the last 6 or so years. My journey has been kind of zigzag, right? So I've had the luxury of having odd projects come my way. And so I can't deny destiny, right? So I've done some consulting on the side, but predominantly I've done mostly corporate. And right now I'm doing that.
So corporate consultancy in terms of mobility management or other things too?
Mostly global mobility and immigration.
Yeah, because it's low-hanging fruit.
It's low, it's quick wins. Not every company has the capacity or the scale to demand the business case to have a whole organization or whole organizational structure to support that. Not out of the gate. And so there might be an occasion where somebody has a question, well, how do we do this? Or what's the implication of this? Or who do we really need? And so it's a small little project here or there. It's not something that I generally advertise because some things are just word of mouth or a quick little couple of hour project. So things come my way.
I'm reading your thing here on from your LinkedIn page, and it's optimization. This is a fancy word for making things work better, I guess, right?
I think that that's a positive twist, right? Because who needs negativity, right? We need to be optimistic. I think there's a lot of processes that in general, if you're not every couple of years looking at what you're doing and how your company's scaling, evolving, then you're really remaining static. And you have to optimize and you really have to kind of evolve. And those that are not are going to struggle, are really going to struggle. Companies are like, whether it's payroll, whether it's comp, whether it's your HRIS systems, any one of those components are constantly moving and evolving. And so mobility and immigration has to really kind of keep up with that and keep up with that where the company's going. And so if you're not, it's going to be really hard for you to kind of maintain support and maintain a pulse. So for me, I feel like I don't come in and feel like we should be judging, but we're optimizing. How can we leverage what we have and tweak and start getting some realignment?
So it should be three points that have to be a goal. If you're going to change something or you're going to optimize something, what are you going to do? You're going to optimize the experience for the actual transferee? Are you going to optimize for the corporation, for the business? Are you going to optimize, fix, update the mobility program itself? So, this is not new.
No.
But everybody's talking about it, but only a couple of people are actually doing some things and succeeding at it. And I'm seeing that now. I'm not privy to a lot of inside information, but I'm seeing in general that corporations, the employer of the mobility team or mobility consultant, they don't care. They don't, leave it alone. Just get it done.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, this is general, in general. Yeah.
In general. And I think historically, because mobility and immigration has been kind of this, in many cases, some of the, like a back office item, it's intimidating because it's complex, it's cumbersome, it's bulky, and it's for people who are not well informed about it, could be overwhelmingly and very costly, right? So if you don't understand any of those components and there's a lot of myths around it, well, then of course, nobody wants to leverage it. Nobody knows how to use it, right? And so you kind of leave it aging in a corner, getting dusty, right? It's the last program that many companies even think about touching or using it as a reliable tool. But again, if you're strategic and if you have different problems throughout the company, like talent, moving talent, younger talent gaps, you have COVID. This pandemic taught us anything, right? And then you have to kind of be more agile with how you're thinking about the new workforce. It's really putting mobility and immigration programs in the forefront on how do you solve some of these more strategic global expansion type of bigger questions in today's landscape. And so now, mobility is kind of that group of people that you've been dusting off in the corner that ends up being tapped when nobody else could start figuring out how do you solve some of these kind of complex topics. You always end up tapping your mobility immigration resource. And so this is the crosshairs of those of us in the field that gets pulled in. And that's why you have to optimize. That's why you're always having, us in this industry are always having to kind of always be looking ahead at the tea leaves and looking at how do we keep our functions a little bit of ahead of the curve.
How do you measure performance of the assignee?
Performance of the assignee. This is an interesting one. I mean, I think this is highly debated, right?
So you got to ask why, but it makes sense. I mean, they're spending millions of dollars. I mean, a lot of money. And if they spent that much on a computer system, somebody would get shot, literally or figuratively, I mean, if it didn't go right. But when something goes wrong with the person or the family causes a problem, oh my God, people say, oh, leave me alone. What are we doing this for, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the old frameworks of mobility and the reasons and the business drivers, I think there wasn't that mentality. I mean, keeping in mind, when I first started in mobility, there wasn't a lot of thought put in as the drivers. It was a lot of one-sided. I think we've now evolved, right? Yeah. I think there's been a change, right, in this space. And so I find it interesting now because I think because of the cost and because of there's now a balance to cost and investment, and now there's more thought into what's driving it. Is this really the best thing for the individual and their family? Is this a more holistic vision for what are we really doing for the end game of the individual's development? Whereas I think before in the old school, like in the early years of mobility, I don't know if it was traditionally thought of holistically. I think now, to your question or to your statement, I think there's more balance and more thought and investment as to what are we really doing with the person beyond the assignment or beyond the relocation, and what are the implications, and really giving that opportunity for the person to really make a more thoughtful decision before the investment is made, which is a huge transition.
So here we are. It's August 12, 21.
Yes.
And I'm working remotely in North Carolina.
Oh.
With you.
Oh, are you? I thought you were out in California.
I'm in San Diego, but with you,
yes,
we're working together. And so I'm working with you in North Carolina. And simultaneously, you're working with me in Seaport Village, San Diego, where I am. Okay. And why should XYZ Corporation spend a ton of money on shipping me to go on a business trip, never mind on a relocation assignment? Well, that is stupid. And because the work can get done like this. Yeah, sure, we'll get on a plane someday when we're not going to get COVID and go work with people who are not vaccinated. Are you kidding? Whoa, I'm not doing that. And so, and I don't know anybody who's sane who would want to do that. They can be political all they want, but it's insanity to go and get infected and or to be at risk. So Zoom or whatever teleconference medium is used. I just happen to love Zoom because it's so easy. But this is it. I mean, I've produced over 350 live events over 25 years. And the first one was in London. First international meeting was in London in 97, November of 97. And in fact, last week we had an interview on Zoom with the guy who was in that meeting with me. And look at my hair, and
it's a full circle, Ed. It's a full circle.
I mean, he doesn't have any hair now, but so, but so, and then he says, well, why don't we partner up, come over to London someday, soon, when, and let's do a live meeting and bring your Zoom with you and we'll bounce it around the world from London. Oh, that's a good idea. When? Well, yeah, when? So now I'm trying to set up a series of live meetings, I mean, in person, in hybrid with doing a Zoom, bouncing that out. So I'm finding it really hard to get people to want to commit to come to a live meeting. Now, some people are planning to go to the ERC meeting in Chicago. It's a little pricey, and also it's a huge risk, but it could be a wonderful marketing opportunity. But you can do this almost as good, not the same, but almost as good on TV. And why should companies spend any money to get me to go to Chicago or North Carolina or London?
Right. So I think it has to do with a couple of different factors, right?
Yeah, please tell me.
So I would advise, and I've probably said it to the last two companies that I was at. It has to do with your particular sector, your particular industry, your client base, and what are the services you're trying to deliver. So even in a pandemic, because let's be realistic, are we really going to get through this pandemic in the next year or two? I think this is going to be something that we all have to live with for an indefinite period of time. I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but let's just be realistic, right? So the reality of that is, how do companies from various different sectors work within this new landscape of environment? And how do we deliver still services by industry to the new format of clients and what our clients demand of us, right? How do we still produce? How do we still? And so in one aspect, we have to balance safety and what employees are wanting from each particular company culture, right? On the other aspect, there's a humanity element that people are both introverts and extroverts. So it's almost like a perfect storm. However, with that being said, I go back down to what are the services that need to be delivered? And in many aspects, there's going to be a hybrid of this, meaning you're going to need skills and talent. And I'm saying this globally, where the talent is needed, but in a hybrid model, getting people closer in location, working remotely in that location, doing this that we're doing, like you and I, and then hybrid model, meaning working closer in clusters so they could probably be in office or closer to the client or closer to wherever they need to physically meet to deliver any tangible, hands-on, face-to-face. But it's going to be still mobility and immigration that's going to drive that on a global scale or at a country level.
Getting the task done.
Getting the task done, right? So to the many folks that are saying to themselves, I don't know if I could handle being at home another year. I need the space. I need the balance. I need to be with my colleagues. There's a lot of people that are still saying that. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that really are enjoying being at home. So I think that you're going to see a hybrid model of that, where companies are going to start to quickly assess how are they going to deliver meaningful work for their clients. What does that look like? Is it going to be in clusters, getting talent closer? And then models that are going to be work from home, but closer, right? Is it going to still require some mobility immigration services because people are now wanting to be more modular, right? But the common factor there is that none of that movement or analysis can be done without the support or the infrastructure of mobility and immigration.
So it's a linkage, and it's not going to go away. But I see companies, boards, telling the C-suite, don't spend any money on sending people for long-term assignments. Yeah, business trip is okay, but it's what do you need that for? So
let me answer that question. Yeah. Because the world is getting really small. And what we've seen just in the last year, and I've seen it all across social media, I've seen it across LinkedIn, is that companies are doubling down on diversity and inclusion. And you cannot get that without exposure to other countries. You cannot have a doubling down and an investment on diversity and inclusion if your executives do not have exposure in managing or seeing other regions, or just solely sitting in one country.
But I got to differ with you, and let's go deeper and expand the conversation by differing. Yeah. Okay.
Let's play devil's advocate, because you really need to have a different perspective and see the impact of your company and your leadership suite by having at least a stint, maybe not a full assignment, but at least a stint in another region.
So I have to say that I've had by Zoom conversations just like this, meaning we're doing the meeting, not the frivolity and comfort that you and I have in this report here, but having meetings by Zoom with people in India, in China, in Australia, New Zealand just last week, and Taiwan, and Tokyo, and somewhere else, Philippines. And that would never happen for me. I wouldn't spend the money to do that. I don't have it, or I don't want to go into debt to finance it, thinking that I'm going to get a payoff. And this way costs nothing. And you have the opportunity to be in a diverse environment and to learn and to initiate contact this way and to initiate a process of doing work together and showing, as a result of the video communication, showing as a follow-up that you can deliver, make a deliverable happen for that person over there. And then you prove yourself capable of having an in-person meeting someday.
So it's beyond that. So you're hitting on the deliverables, and from a corporate perspective, that's fine. But when you're doubling down on diversity and inclusion, you're empathizing and connecting on what drives people. And you're trying to say that you're really going to try to understand people on a cultural level. You're never going to get that through a Zoom or through a Microsoft Teams or through a WebEx or through any video. When you're leading an entire organization of 300 or 10,000 people, you really need to be of presence, right? We're going to eventually we're not going to go like avatars and be like, in a virtual world, right? Like, we're going to get back to being of presence, right? And being in person at some point, right? And so if you're going to lead an entire function, then you should be connecting to people culturally and understand the people, the places, where they're coming from, where they're relating to. And so there's always going to be a business case to develop your succession and your development and your second and maybe even third tier next generation of C-suite with at least a rotation from a development plan. And then you also want to have your people that are up and coming. This generation that's coming behind us, and I'm going to put you in my bucket. I'm not aging myself with our hair, but this next generation, they are not holding on to one country. They want to be mobile, right? You're going to lose a whole generation of talent if you're not open your options to them. So you want to keep that interest and you want to build them up and have them see that there's an investment there. So people are not going to accept leaders that are not culturally diverse and not open to understanding their perspective. And a video is not going to do it for people. That is not the depth that people want to see in their leadership. It's well and good, and it's great, but it goes flat.
We interrupt this broadcast to bring you a timely announcement.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov. I'm Angela Lane.
Together, we're researchers, writers, and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Delzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Let's get back to the discussion of when am I getting on that plane? When am I going to spend $5,000 on this show up? And I'm not going to do it. First of all, it's harder to have that $5,000 in my pocket to be able to plan it and even want to do it when I may want to get a new refrigerator or something, you know? When am I going to spend it on travel for when I could have a meeting like this and make it work through being personable and having parameters. Yeah, and you can't do this kind of a meeting normally. You can't do this kind of a meeting on a one-off. Just like you and I, we're doing this like we've been talking for 20 years, but we haven't. And so it's because of the personalities that we have and the want to make it happen. and to learn something. And we can't do it sitting across the cafe table with a glass of wine, although that would be nice. And someday I can see that. But like, for instance, I'm trying to set up a series of small meetings in person, but with a hybrid, with a Zoom component. And I'm getting really amazing pushback saying, hey, no offense, but I'll do your virtual, but I don't want to be in person right now.
It's not going to be for everyone. I mean, I think it's going to be based on the business model. If a company is expanding and it's a brand new country, they're going to double down and put a leader in that country, because you have to have the right executive presence in order to get the right talent to be drawn in and develop that country and develop that growth. If you're already an established country, like an established company that's not expanding, then you're going to look at that like return on investment proposition differently. You're not going to have, you really have to consider the framework and the policy. It's not going to be like in the 90s. Okay, I'm aging myself again. It's not going to be the deep pocket policies of the 90s where the policies were like 200,000, right? Like, we're not talking about the 90s where it was only the executives going on assignment and they were getting paid for the houses in the US and getting the whole life plus a car and stuff. We're not in that era, right? So I think companies are now being more conservative. The plans are a little bit more budget friendly, more palpable. And it depends on per company and per the growth. And what are they really doing? What is the need and what is the gaps, right? But companies have to wake up to the fact that they're going to lose either in training for their next C-suite, training for succession, and really missing out on the next up and coming generation, because they are mobile. They don't want to stay stagnant, and they want to see a development plan that's going to take them beyond the current border that they're at. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, but you got to keep mobility in itself. And I've been able to do it now twice, where I've been able to frame up a mobility program that's cost effective and reasonable. And still, assignments are really, let's be honest, you've seen it. Nobody does assignments. It's a one-way transfer there and a one-way transfer back. Who's really doing assignments nowadays? Like a true, fully paid, equalized assignment. That's a handful of companies. You just got to be creative.
A handful of people.
And a handful of people.
So it's a transitionary time. So let's go back to the 3 points, okay? How to understand the efficiency and the value add of an international policy and practice of shipping people and stuff for the company. But that's the last one. What about for me? I'm the transferee. How is the company going to treat me while I'm on assignment and when I come back? And who is my mentor along the way? It's not my line manager, because they're out of sight is out of mind. I'm, unless we have regular Zoom meetings, which is doubtful, but you never know. And so it may be on my Apple Watch or something. We could talk to each other. Hello. So I mean,
what are we like?
So why should companies spend money on international travel? It's stupid.
And you're
and so I mean, here we are. We're coming back in. We got all this real estate, and the corporation has all this real estate, meaning it's a big building or a spread out thing, right? And
they're vacating
there's nobody
there.
There's nobody there. What are they doing with this? What are we doing? And so, and then a whole bunch of people say they're going to quit, but I don't know who is. But So we have the 3 points. How is an international assignment going to benefit the corporation? That's the last thing. But the number one thing is the talent. Number two thing is the stakeholders. And number three thing is the business. And so what's the value? So do you know Japanese companies, real Japanese companies, not Toyota in the US, but Toyota in Japan? And they don't allow a transferee to leave Japan until not only the employee, but the family is totally prepared, cultural, language, stuff, that they don't
There's an
embarrass.
investment.
They don't embarrass the company. And they look at the US sending people out on assignments, and look at the headlines when people have to escape in a suitcase to get out of the country. And then Japan's trying to get their hands on them and bring them back and put them in jail or something. It's nuts. And it's all because of lack of preparation, lack of understanding, lack of cultural sensitivity. And it's a minefield. Why are they doing this?
So I think you stumble on something. And I think
I don't have any answers.
I have answers. And I'll be brutally honest.
Okay.
What I have seen.
You're live on TV.
Oh, well, I'm not going to name any company, so don't worry. But what I've observed out in the industry and talking to colleagues and just, I don't hold back, is that I think that, I think it's both a cultural perspective and also the companies, whatever company you work for, right? Over the pendulum is swinging, right? Now I advocate, and I'll separate out myself in how I manage my programs and what I advocate for what I put in my policy framework. So I'm going to separate out myself. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I think companies who are focused too much on budgets will force a mobility leader to skim down on benefits. That's the brutal truth.
Right.
Right.
And when they do that, they run the risk of that person
not being prepared,
looking for a job the next day without
not being prepared, and not being prepared for what they're going to face. Point blank. That's the truth, right? Now, over the last 15 years, the perspective of mobility and you could even say that about immigration. What mobility and immigration is meant to do, the pendulum has swung, right? And I'm going to throw another twist to it. Depending on where that vertical sits, also has an influence, right? So if it sits in HR, that has an impact. If it sits in its own vertical within a company, that has an impact. If it sits in legal, with tentacles in HR, that has an impact. If it sits under total rewards, that has an impact, right? Because it's different filters and different agendas forcing or influencing the structure, okay? So that's a perfect storm in itself. The country, so if the corporate entity is in the US, that country's cultural influences. Okay, so where we are today, I'm going to tell you my approach. So now I'm going to put I've given you the brutal answer. What you see in programs and how assignees are treated and how well they're prepared or not prepared and how they're treated throughout the life cycle of the assignee. That is a reflection of all of that, right? If they have signed an employment contract that's in Europe and they're going on an international assignment outbound, you best believe that they're going to have the most protection. Right? Because European countries have a lot of employment labor laws that are very protective. That's a reality. The US, not so much. That's a reality. Okay? So I'm not surprised. I know, to your example, that a lot of a lot of what you stated is not a surprise to me, because it's a culturally ingrained that nobody within the family should embarrass not only the company, but the family name. So the whole family has to be utmost prepared to represent not just the company, but the family name, right? Now I'm going to just give you my answer. Every program that I've put forward, that I've supported, even when I was younger in my career, I empathize with the people that are going, I feel like I'm a steward. I take it on as an honor. These people are entrusting us with so much. So I feel like, and everyone that has ever worked on my teams, every vendor that I've ever partnered with, they hear a couple of words: steward and duty of care, and we are creating a village. And everybody has to really capture those words, because end to end, like, we're prepping them. Here's what to expect from the very first consultation of considering any interest. We're laying out, hey, did you know this? Are you aware of this? Like, you really have to prepare people, even for the stuff that they're not aware of. You're caring for them. And even when they're going through the assignment, and even, like, I believe in the 30, 60, 90 checkpoints. Some of this is old school, some of it, not a lot of people do. But to your point, it's not a dump and run, because somebody has to be driving the bus. Somebody has to be worried about where this person, are they successful in the long term? Somebody has to be thinking about the manager connecting with the employee. If you assume that somebody's thinking about them, you know what they say about assumption. We're old enough to know that you're making an ass out of you and me, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's my approach, but I know not all programs are run like that. All the programs I've ever implemented, I believe in a village. I believe in the duty of care of every person in every family, every partner, every vendor. They need to embody that, because no assignee should ever feel like they're left alone.
So, social awareness, and this is not political, but social awareness. No, not political. It's just business, but it's social awareness is creeping into the vernacular every day, and actually taken over in some respects. So, trust. Do people trust the presidency? Do people trust the Supreme Court decisions? Do people trust big business, whatever that means? Do people trust small business, neighborhood store owners? Do people trust teachers? Do people trust the Center for Disease Control? All right. And the answer is increasingly jagged, uneven, and confused, now more than ever, in a lot of things. So let's go back to business. And Gallup does these surveys, and over a period of time, you see the trends, and that becomes believable. If you just take a one-off, you don't know what the context is. But the trending is that employees, this leads to the great resignation idea. Okay. This leads to distrust in what the companies are going to actually do, never mind what they say they're going to do. And people, young people, let's just say not only Gen Z, but younger millennials, say under 35, right? Okay. They got the tech skills. They know their value. And they're saying, see you later. You give me protection and you find me a job before I return from assignment, like the next day after I land. And if I have a mentor and coached about how to do things, hello, I'm spending your money. Give me leadership, somebody who I could talk with a mentor, a coach, about someone who's been there, done that. All right. Where's the guy or the gal that I'm following along? Where did they go? Why don't they help me out? Have a cycle, a recycle of talent rather than waste. All right. And this kind of thinking is permeating now, and it's coming up from the younger generation in the workforce. And they're saying, wake up, companies.
But it's not a new idea.
Not a new idea, but it hasn't been implemented, except in a few cases.
So I'm finally going to mention, when I was at IBM was doing that.
A long time ago. Yeah.
A long time ago.
Right. Because
so
smart people, they figured it out. Right.
So like when I was first starting global mobility, like when we first started, on a massive scale, right? This concept wasn't brand new. And now I'm aging myself, but that was like 15 years ago, right? Not a new concept. That's duty of care. That's basics. Don't waste your talent. Don't have them go somewhere else.
That's
the forethought.
It's the Japanese concept.
Have the forethought to know your talent, know your skill set, and instead of, it's more expensive, hands down. And there's data out there to show this. But I wasn't prepared for this question, sir. But there's data out there that shows that a company spends hands down more money recruiting and sourcing externally and letting go of people versus if they just focused a little bit of software, honing in on the talent that they have in-house and reallocating and opening up opportunities for the talent that they have in-house.
So I had a conversation yesterday with a guy who's a third generation business owner, same business. And guess what? The business makes plastic bags.
Okay.
For packaging.
Yeah.
Bagels or hefty with the zip
for
thing.
Bread.
Right. Bread and for all kinds of things. And plastics are ending up in the ocean. Right. And okay, so that means people are throwing them out. So the discussion, so anyway, this guy had an awakening in the middle of the night a few years ago. And he says, wait a minute, plastic bags are the enemy. And we've got to learn more about recycling, or in other words, making plastic bags to begin with to be used again for another purpose or something, right? Rather than disposed of. All right. And to incentivize, to make the financial incentives to companies and entrepreneurs and to individuals to not throw away plastics, to put them in a compost something.
Yeah.
And then they're regurgitated somewhat and into something else, right? So anyway, this guy's company is now into this in a big way. And so he wrote a book about his transition of thinking and how it's a business book, how to survive when a black swan event crashes in.
Well, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and so it's called sustainability or something. But so it's in post-production right now. It's not even ready for the prime time, but it will be probably this weekend. And so, and I'll share that with you, of course. But it's just like an awakening. So this guy called it circularity.
Brilliant.
In other words, it's circular, rather than buy it, throw it out, done. Mm-hmm. Reuse everything somehow. Mm-hmm. And so reuse talent.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's where, when you kept on saying, like in our previous segment, I feel like we're moving on topics, but the little bit of money on moving someone on a one-way reload, if you knew the cost in finding a resource, is nothing then compared. Companies spend money on finding talent, but if it's minimal compared, if you compare the minimal cost of hey, I found this resource that you already have in this organization here. If you need that person and you're missing that talent in this country or in this state, the minimal cost of incentivizing that person to relocate or to make that transition or rethink the position so they could do it remote. It's reinventing or rethinking the approach that companies are not doing that enough. They're not realizing the talent that they already have internally. And they're losing a lot of internal knowledge about the company, about the platforms, about the technology. And that's a missing opportunity. And they're wasting a lot of money on the flip side.
That's a cost that is not on the balance sheet.
It's not. It's not.
Yet it's right there.
And it's right there. And it's something that I've talked about with two talent leaders in not in the last company I was at, but in the previous two companies. But it's very hard. The technology is not quite there to pin it. So it's a number that's almost like two dots that are not quite lining up. So you can't put the data behind it. We're almost there. But you and I are talking about it.
Anyway, Heazel, thank you for being our guest today on Global TV. We could go on and on. Please come back.
Happy to. We have other topics. There's so much to go on. Happy to be back.
I know. There's a lot. Yeah. So I'll send you a memo. Thank you.
Thank you.
How can people find you? Do you have a website?
I have actually, I'm very low key. So I like to be found when needed. So right now I'm just on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Okay. So people can see how you spell your name right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so do a LinkedIn.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day and stay safe.